The heat of the deep American South, the kind that steals your breath and presses down on your very soul, hung thick over the Rutherford plantation in the summer of 1822. This wasn't a place where time flowed. It stagnated, clinging to the Spanish moss that draped the cypress trees like weeping shrouds. Within this suffocating stillness lived an enslaved woman known only as Nana. She was a vessel of profound loss, having borne children only to bury them without ceremony or prayer. Yet her body stubbornly produced milk, a heartbreaking biological refusal to accept their absence. This made her tragically indispensable, a wet nurse or amidate. When the plantation mistress gave birth and recoiled from the infant's first gasps, Nana was called. The child was unnervingly silent and pale, with a shock of black hair that seemed to absorb the light. He didn't cry when the air first touched him. Instead, his eyes, wide and disconcertingly still, locked onto Nana's. They did not blink. A wave of ice-cold dread washed over her. This gaze did not belong to a newborn. It was ancient, calculating, and chillingly empty. Despite the alarm screaming inside her, duty, etched deep by a lifetime of servitude, forced her to put him to her breast. He drank with a terrifying urgency, a hunger that seemed to draw not just nourishment but life itself. When he finally pulled away, a dark stain of blood marked the corner of his mouth. She tried to dismiss it, to rationalize it as her own cracked skin, but the lie tasted like ash. Within days, the atmosphere on the plantation curdled. The house slaves spoke in terrified whispers. The baby was silent, always awake, always watching. Birds avoided the nursery windows. Dogs whimpered and hid when his shadow passed. Nana felt the change in her bones. Her milk grew heavy, thick, drawn from a place deeper than flesh. Her dreams became terrifyingly lucid, visions of lightless fire and water black as pitch, and tiny hands reaching up from the soil. The master visited the crib often, not with a father's love, but with a vacant, intense stare. Nana once saw him kneel and whisper something into the baby's ear, and the infant responded with a slow, deliberate blink, as if acknowledging a pact. The devil himself could not be nursed on love, only on a mother's deepest sorrow. The sickness spread from the child to the land. Fires burned low, food spoiled instantly. An enslaved man was found inexplicably drowned in a dry barrel. Old Salome, whose sight was gone but whose vision was keen, gripped Nana's arm. "Stop feeding it, child. That ain't no baby, born with teeth in his soul." But Nana was property. She had no choice. Her duty was servitude, not salvation. One night she woke to find herself outside, barefoot on the damp earth, the cold, silent child in her arms. Her dress was soaked with milk, but she had no memory of nursing him. The woods around her seemed to sway in a wind that didn't exist. She held him tighter, impossibly cold, impossibly alive. Then from the black tangle of the trees a whisper came, not human, not animal, but ancient and overwhelmingly hungry. The summer wore on, thickening, turning the air sweet and rotting. The child was 2 months old, and the absolute silence remained unbroken. He made deliberate gurgles and low knowing sighs, but never a true cry of an infant. This unnatural stillness was a weight that crushed Nana's ability to sleep. She found herself waking up in strange places, under the porch, in the damp, earthy root cellar, always clutching the infant, always with his unblinking eyes fixed on her face, as if he had been watching her dreams unfold. The house itself began to fracture. Doors warped, mirrors clouded from within, and the parlor clock tolled 13 times at midnight. The plantation's master, however, seemed to grow lighter, paler, as if a great dark obligation was finally being fulfilled. He pressed the family signet ring into the baby's tiny palm, and the infant's fingers closed around it, like a lock clicking shut. The whispers in the quarters became desperate. Some claimed the mistress tried to smother him, and the cloth came away scorched. Others swore Nana's grief milk had breathed life into a stillborn horror. Old Salome had the final damning word, "You nursed a spirit, child. Now it's yours to carry." Nana had no answer left. Her own mind felt syrupy and slow, as if something was slowly displacing her own thoughts. Her hum had become a mournful minor key drone that sent the livestock fleeing. She was being hollowed out drop by drop. One evening a clap of thunder rolled across a sky that was perfectly clear, a sound of judgment without a cloud to deliver it. Nana felt the final terrifying moment of realization dawn. The child hadn't just been feeding on her milk. He had been feeding on her soul, on her memories, on everything that kept her human. She looked down at the pale, silent face, and in that moment, she understood the whole monstrous secret. She hadn't given birth to a child. She had birthed a hunger, and that hunger was now utterly, finally her own. The horror metastasized. The overseer's prize hound, a vicious creature famous for its ferocity, suddenly let out one terrible echoing howl and was gone. 3 days later, they found it floating in the stagnant irrigation trench. Its body was whole, but its eyes had been perfectly excised, 2 precise bloodless voids where sight had once lived. That night, Nana sat by the crude cradle, and the child, of course, was watching her. He did not blink. His pupils seemed impossibly vast, a void in which her own reflection stared back, unnervingly still, refusing to move when she did. Her body was racked with pain, her joints swollen and aching. The other enslaved people now kept a respectful, fearful distance, treating her as if she were simultaneously sacred and utterly cursed. Children left pathetic corn husk dolls on her doorstep. Old women looked away. In a moment of wrenching fatigue, Nana whispered to the boy, "What are you?" He merely gurgled, smiled, and reached for her. And so she gave. Because what choice did a chattel have? She was owned first by the men of flesh, and now perhaps twice owned by the dark thing she fed. The price of being owned, she realized, was that you were always available to be claimed by the next master, human or otherwise. One morning, shrouded in a sickly, sour fog, Nana was summoned to the great room, a place forbidden to her, and told to bring the child. The mistress was absent. Waiting were the master and 3 strangers, men in stiff, dark, foreign-cut suits, their boots clean of plantation dust. Their small, sunken eyes did not dwell on the baby, but on Nana herself. They asked if the child spoke, if he cried in his sleep. She answered no twice. The 3rd man stepped forward, inhaled the air around the infant, and delivered a dry, crackling smile that made her gorge rise. They dismissed her without another word. She left colder than she arrived, the baby's gaze seeming to linger behind her, still locked onto something unseen in that room. That night, Salome materialized near the water barrel, her hair inexplicably damp. Her milky eyes were sudden and sharp with knowledge. "The men in black," she murmured. "They call themselves the Sons of Black Sweat. They come once a generation, always for a child." Nana could only stare, frozen. Salome continued, her voice a dry rasp. "They believe the land is wounded and it drinks pain. They feed it. In return, it gives them wealth and crops that never rot. But the price is paid in flesh, in soul, sometimes in the soul of something not yet shaped. In the following days, the plantation itself seemed to warp. Time bent, with twilight stretching endlessly and night falling prematurely. Workers began to collapse, their bodies cold, their mouths stained purple. A runaway was found not on a tree, but hanging from the nursery rafters. No rope, no ladder, no earthly explanation. The master became emaciated, his eyes yellowed, spending hours locked in his study with the child. He emerged smelling of smoke and ash, his fingers blackened. Nana once pressed her ear to the door and heard not a cry or a lullaby, but low, slow chanting in a language that predated her ancestors. Beneath the cradle, she found a symbol carved into the wood, a spiral of thorns surrounded by 12 small eyes. She scrubbed until her knuckles bled, but by dawn the symbol had reappeared. Her dreams turned to corridors of salt and bone, and her breasts in those nightmares dripped black ink onto the child's lips. She began to flake, her skin thin as paper, her breath fogging even in the suffocating heat. The boy still did not cry. One afternoon she awoke at the edge of the swamp. The child was gone from her arms. A soft, horrible giggle came from the reeds. She saw him floating just above the black water, limbs outstretched, his eyes fixed on hers, an ancient smile on his tiny face. The water did not ripple. He blinked, and Nana was back on her cot, soaked in milk and something darker. Salome's voice echoed in her mind. "You still feed it. You still bind yourself." The time for questioning was over. Now came the time for knowing. The plantation existed under a dim, sickly grey haze. The cotton bloomed too early, the sap staining the workers' hands like a corrupt bargain. The local preacher turned away at the gates, weeping blood, refusing to set foot on the property. Inside, the master was sealed in his study, candles flickering, the scent of wax and iron heavy in the air. Nana heard the murmurs, a voice not his, not the child's, but something lower, older. like roots twisting through stone. The child grew heavier, a dead weight of clay, yet his eyes never closed when she set him down. He watched the rafters, the darkness. When she pressed him to her chest, he fed still, a boundless hunger draining her dry. But her milk had utterly changed. It had gone from white to pale amber, then darker, deeper, until it was the color and viscosity of oil. It wasn't just milk anymore, she thought, watching the dark liquid stain his lips. It was the offering, and she was the font of a power no mortal should ever possess or feed. The dark oil-like liquid that now sustained the child stained the cloth she used to wipe it a permanent, unholy black. Her bones ached with a deep, consuming pain, as if her very marrow were being drawn out. By all rights, she should have been a husk, but instead, she felt something new bloom within her, not strength, not life, but a terrifying, unnatural swelling, a second heartbeat pulsing just beneath her ribs. Salome found her in the fields, offering no words, only a gaze heavy with dread and a small bundle pressed into Nana's hands. Inside was a root, carved with symbols too ancient to be part of any prayer. A last-ditch charm, perhaps. Nana buried it beneath the boy's cradle. That night, the root burned itself through the floorboards, leaving a smoking, charred hole. A storm then rolled in from the east, an impossible phenomenon. No clouds, no lightning, only low, constant thunder that vibrated the glass in the windows. The soil softened, voices whispered from the wells, and a girl, driven by the sound of phantom children, threw herself into the water, never to be seen again. Nana no longer feared sleep. She craved it. In dreams she walked with the dead, her own children distant and pale, staring at her from the edge of an endless field. They didn't speak, but their heads turned slowly toward a shadow that trailed her, tall, crawling, impossible. In the waking world, her reflection grew dim, barely visible. The master now passed her in the hallways with eyes hollowed by a force he no longer controlled. On the 7th night of the 7th week, the baby finally made a noise. It was a brief, sharp laugh, the sound of glass cracking underfoot. Every lantern in the house instantly snuffed out. She sat in the absolute darkness, the boy in her arms, the cradle now empty. He had outgrown it, not in physical size, but in form. His infantile flesh was just a shell for a presence that now expanded, pressing against the walls, bending the very silence around him. The ritual was complete. She had not only fed the thing they wanted, she had made it powerful enough to claim them all. The night they called the gathering arrived without stars. Smoke not from fire, but from something smoldering for generations, hung low over the fields. The air trembled. A single drum beat in the deep woods, not a rhythm, but a slow, heavy breath of the earth. Nana didn't wait for a summons. She carried the child pressed against her bare chest. His skin now radiated a slow heat, like coals beneath ash. The master's study door opened to her touch. Inside, the men waited. The master, the 3 strangers, and others, pale-faced, dressed in black. They had drawn a circle on the floor, marked with symbols not in chalk or salt, but in blood. At the center, a stone basin pulsed with a thick, dark fluid. Nana was ordered to place the child within it. She stood still. The master stepped forward to force the command, but the boy merely turned his head, and the master instantly dropped to his knees, not in prayer, but as if pulled by invisible chains. His mouth worked, but no sound came, and his eyes rolled back until only the white remained. The others recoiled. The oldest man reached for a hidden charm or blade, but his hand froze, locked midair, and then his body quietly, utterly twisted, bowing to an unseen rot. Nana stepped into the bloody circle. No one barred her path. She walked to the basin and placed the child beside it, not in it. He sat upright, his spine strong, his eyes burning with devastating memory. She faced the terrified, mute men. "I gave you my body," she said, her voice low and steady, a sound that cut through the silence. "You fed from it, you built your temples with my blood, nursed your gods on my grief. But you forgot one thing. We remember. We always do." The study floor split with a hairline crack, a whisper, and from the fissure rose the smell of wet earth and old iron, accompanied by a sound like teeth grinding beneath the soil. The boy stood. He opened his mouth not in hunger or a cry, but in a single, sustained, terrifying song. The room shook. The men began to scream, but their voices were stolen before they reached their throats. Nana did not flinch. The cleansing began, not with visible flame, but with shadow. It peeled from the corners, creeping, wrapping, absorbing. The study vanished, then the walls until all that remained was the circle, the basin, and the woman and child. By dawn, the Rutherford plantation house was a mound of ash. The fields lay silent, empty. Some say they saw Nana walking through the swamp at sunrise, barefoot, the child now walking beside her, hand in hand. Others whisper that Nana was never a woman, but a spirit of vengeance, shaped by the centuries of silence and pain of the South. But the land remembers. In the ruins of the estate nothing grows. Birds refuse to land. The wind will not stir. Only a small scorched but whole cradle is said to rock gently in a breeze that does not blow. And somewhere just beyond the veil of trees, a lullaby carries on the air, low, steady, and terrifyingly familiar.